In history, there have been some epic eruptions and historic landings that we should all know about. And, fun fact, they all happened on May. Today, we'll explore 4 amazing events that occurred on this day that you probably did not know about. Make sure to stay until the end because one of them is an absolute doozy. In addition to being the birthday of Jonas Salk, the man who developed the first safe and effective polio vaccine May 19th, also marks the anniversary of 2 famous historic landings, one on the Moon and another not so far away on the Earth. There have been plenty of famous landings on May 19th, but which ones are those? Well, let's find out. Our first stop is to revisit the past and talk about some truly explosive stuff. Lassen Peak in California erupted in 1915. The eruption of Lassen Peak was actually the most violent eruption in the contiguous United States in the 20th century. It was also the longest-lasting eruption with steam explosions occurring almost daily from May to February over a span of 9 months. But let's rewind to May when the most violent blast occurred. An early morning explosion at 1:30 a.m. on May sent an estimated 2.5 cubic kilometers or 600 million cubic yards of material into the air. This eruption column reached 9 miles or 15 kilometers into the atmosphere. That's as high as Mount Everest is tall. Pyroclastic flows descended down the mountainside, destroying everything in their path. These flows were hot avalanches of gas and solid volcanic matter moving at speeds up to 64 km per hour, or 40 miles per hour. They reached areas more than 11 kilometers or 7 miles away from the volcano. And if that doesn't sound like a big deal, consider this. The destructive power of pyroclastic flows is similar to a strong tornado. However, unlike a tornado, they cover much larger areas. If you survived the initial blast and flow, you might have thought you were in the clear, right? Nope. More was in store. On June 1915, heavy rain saturated the newly erupted material on the mountainside. On June, these saturated materials mixed with loose volcanic ash to form thick flowing mud that rushed down the valleys. These lahars traveled as far as 24 kilometers or 15 miles from the volcano and reached areas over 300 meters or 1,000 feet in elevation above the original flow. Houses, barns, and even railroad cars were swept away by the sheer volume of debris. People had to flee for higher ground to escape the destruction. In total, Lassen Peak's eruptions resulted in the loss of over 200 homes and other structures. Over 170 square kilometers or 66 square miles of land were covered with ash and pumice. Roads and railroads were destroyed and more than 700 people had to be evacuated from their homes. It was the largest volcanic eruption in the United States since Mount Katmai in Alaska erupted in 1912. The eruption column of Lassen Peak was so massive that it left a permanent scar on the landscape. A new 244-meter or 800-foot-high cinder cone was formed at the summit, and a broad lava dome extended 3 kilometers or 2 miles down the mountain. The violence of the eruption and the extensive damage caused by the mudflows serve as a reminder of the destructive power of nature. But enough about dramatic eruptions. Let's shift gears and talk about something equally exciting, the historic moon landing. Apollo 12 launched on May 1969, marking a giant leap for mankind. This was NASA's second manned mission to the moon under the Apollo program, following the groundbreaking Apollo 11 mission that had landed astronauts Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin on the lunar surface in July 1968. Apollo 12 carried 3 astronauts, Pete Conrad, Alan Bean, and Richard Gordon. Their mission was to land near the site of the Surveyor 3 spacecraft, which had successfully touched down on the moon in April 1967. The goal was to retrieve and examine parts of the Surveyor 3 for analysis back on Earth. It was also an opportunity to practice the procedures for future moon landings, including extravehicular activity, or EVA. During the EVEs, astronauts would venture out onto the moon's surface to collect samples and conduct experiments. The Apollo 12 crew spent about 31 hours on the lunar surface exploring the area around their landing site. They collected about 34 kilograms or 75 pounds of rock and soil samples, which provided valuable insights into the composition and history of the Moon. They also deployed various scientific experiments to study the lunar environment, such as a seismometer to measure moonquakes. Now let's take a closer look at what makes Apollo 12 a significant event in space exploration history. First, it showcased the technological prowess of the United States during the height of the space race with the Soviet Union. The successful navigation and landing of Apollo 12 demonstrated the advancements in rocketry and spacecraft technology that had been made since the first moon landing. Secondly, Apollo 12 marked a significant step towards establishing a human presence on the Moon. The astronauts' ability to navigate the lunar surface and collect samples provided valuable knowledge about the challenges and possibilities of long-term habitation on the Moon. And thirdly, the mission had a profound impact on scientific understanding of the Moon and the solar system. The rock and soil samples brought back by Apollo 12 contained unique minerals and isotopes that provided clues about the Moon's formation and evolution. These samples continue to be studied today and have yielded new insights into the history of our solar system. Now, let's switch gears once again and move from the Moon to the world of cinema. Believe it or not, we have yet another iconic event from May, the premiere of Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. Yes, believe it or not, this movie is actually old enough to vote. It seems like just yesterday that young Padawans everywhere were introduced to the Star Wars universe through this film. It was a cultural phenomenon that captivated audiences worldwide. The movie marked the return of Star Wars after a 16-year hiatus and introduced a new generation to the beloved characters and storylines set in a galaxy far, far away. The Phantom Menace was the first installment in the Star Wars prequel trilogy, which aimed to explore the origins of the Star Wars universe. The film was directed by George Lucas and featured an ensemble cast including Liam Neeson, Ewan McGregor, and Natalie Portman. It told the story of young Anakin Skywalker, a slave on the desert planet Tatooine, who was discovered by Jedi Knight Qui-Gon Jinn. Anakin, his incredible abilities with the starship led to his rescue mission with Obi-Wan Kenobi and Senator Amidala. Throughout the movie, viewers were treated to stunning visual effects and an epic space opera filled with lightsaber battles, pod racing, and political intrigue. The Phantom Menace introduced Jar Jar Binks, a clumsy but lovable Gungan who became a fan favorite. Despite mixed reviews from critics, the film was a massive commercial success, grossing over $1 billion worldwide. It broke box office records upon its release and became the highest-grossing movie of 1999. The Phantom Menace sparked a renewed interest in the Star Wars franchise and paved the way for the release of two more prequel films. Episode 2, Attack of the Clones in 2002, and Episode the Third, Revenge of the Sith in 2005. The film's impact extended beyond the box office, influencing popular culture and inspiring countless fan creations. From toys to clothing, the Phantom Menace merchandise became a staple in many households. The movie's iconic lines such as "Do or do not," "There is no try," and "Use the Force, Luke" became part of popular culture. The release of The Phantom Menace marked a significant moment in cinematic history and left an indelible mark on the Star Wars fandom. We still have one more thing to talk about. May is a date that will live in infamy in the annals of American history. On this day in 1980, Mount St. Helens in Washington state erupted in a cataclysmic event that forever changed the landscape of the region. The eruption was the most violent event in the history of the United States, unleashing an explosive force equivalent to over 500 of the bombs dropped on Hiroshima. But let's take a closer look at what happened on that fateful day. The morning began like any other with the sun rising over the majestic peak of Mount St. Helens. However, unbeknownst to the residents of the nearby town of Castle, Washington, a powerful earthquake had struck the region just minutes before. This was a harbinger of what was to come. At 8:32 a.m., the earthquake triggered a massive landslide on the north face of the mountain, exposing a magma chamber beneath the surface. Within moments, the pressure from the magma forced a lateral blast, sending shock waves that could be felt as far away as Idaho. Pyroclastic flows and ash billowed into the sky, reaching heights of 15 miles or 24 kilometers. Hot ash and gases rained down on the surrounding areas, incinerating everything in their path. The blast zone extended over 230 square miles, or 595 square kilometers, leaving a crater nearly 1 mile or 1.6 kilometers wide and 1,000 feet or 300 meters deep. But the devastation didn't stop there. The eruption column ejected an estimated 5.7 cubic kilometers or 1.3 billion cubic yards of material into the atmosphere, creating a cloud of ash that spread across the Pacific Northwest. Ash fell as far away as Canada and Mexico, and it was estimated that 75% of the trees in the blast zone were either blown over or incinerated. The force of the eruption was so intense that it was felt as far away as New York City, and in total, the eruption caused the collapse of more than 200 bridges, thousands of homes and businesses, and billions of dollars in property damage. Despite the scale of the disaster, the loss of life was relatively low, with only 5 people losing their lives due to the eruption. The eruption of Mount St. Helens was a pivotal moment in scientific history. It provided valuable insights into the behavior of volcanoes and helped scientists better understand the forces that shape our planet. Observatories were set up to monitor the eruption, providing continuous data on the mountain's activity. The eruption also led to significant advances in volcanology and geological research, with scientists from around the world studying the aftermath to learn more about volcanic processes. The impact of the eruption extended beyond the scientific community. The event captivated the public imagination and inspired awe and wonder at the power of nature. Mount St. Helens became a symbol of resilience and the ability to rebuild in the face of adversity. Today, the site of the eruption is a popular destination for tourists and researchers alike. Visitors can explore the blast zone, walk through the forest of fallen trees, and witness the ongoing recovery of the ecosystem. The eruption of Mount St. Helens serves as a reminder of the power and unpredictability of nature and the importance of scientific research and public education in protecting lives and property. And with that, we bring you the end of our journey through the epic eruptions and historic landings that took place on May. From the violent eruption of Lassen Peak to the successful moon landing of Apollo 12 and the cinematic release of Star Wars, Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, each of these events has left an indelible mark on history. We hope you enjoyed learning about these amazing events and encourage you to stay tuned for more informative videos. Thank you for watching.